council members and participants, we are now live.
Good afternoon, everyone, and sorry for the delay. We had some technical issues getting online, but thank you for your patience. And this is a public hearing of the Committee on Public Safety regarding Bill number 220654. And before we call the meeting to order, I want to recognize Samantha Williams Esquire for an important announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand that state law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. Everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this meeting is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in this meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to Councilman Jones recognizing members for questions or comments they have for witnesses, I will note at this time that we will use the chat feature available in Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, this chat feature must only be used for this purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams, and we will now call the roll, and will members in attendance state your name and say a few words so that the cameras can capture your likeness.
Councilmember Gautier.
Present. Hi, Mr. Chair. Hello, Ms. Williams.
Hi. Councilmember Gim.
I am present.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Thomas.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm present.
Good afternoon.
And Chairman Jones is present, and we are also joined by Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you so very much. And before we get started, I'd like to hear from the author of this bill to comment on its features.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for your availability for this hearing today regarding updates to the curfew bill. As you all know, earlier this year, actually in the spring, there was an update to the curfew bill that was supposed to be just for the summer months, and the bill would actually sunset September 29th of this year. Based on data and information that we have received internally from our partners in the administration relative to not only the implementation of this legislation, but also how many curfew cases we are seeing all across the city, as well as, unfortunately, all of the criminal incidents that involve young people under the age of 18, we have decided to remove the sunset provision from this legislation, meaning that this bill would be in effect moving forward at the times that are stipulated, which would be for 13 and under 9:30, and then for the 14 through 17-year-olds 10 p.m. We wanted to ensure that we address some additional concerns relative to the amendments that were circulated from the law department, recognizing that there are 4 exceptions to the ordinance. One is if the minor is accompanied by a parent. The other is if they're doing an errand or legitimate business that's been directed by a parent, if they're engaged in employment, and that was one that we received a number of questions about, or if they're on active duty in the military. In addition to that, the law department's opinion is that we needed to add additional exceptions to ensure that this law would be able to stand up in court if necessary. And so those provisions would be if the young person is in a vehicle that's involved in interstate travel, if they're involved with dealing with an emergency, if they're on the side sidewalk that abuts the minor's home or the next door neighbor's residence, and if the neighbor has not complained to the police. Now, I will say that we've even seen a case like that earlier this summer. In attendance at an official school or religious activity or exercising their First Amendment rights. And per the recommendation of the Law Department, we are incorporating those amendments to ensure that we have a strong bill that will stand up in court. We all recognize that we are in a state of emergency with our young people, and we are utilizing just another tool in our toolbox to seek to help our young people, in addition to the further expansion of the community evening resource centers, which I'm sure we'll be able to talk about briefly during this hearing today. But we are simply seeking to do all that we can for our young people. And I've coined a term and really recognize what we are dealing with. And I call it the Corbett Cut COVID kids. Those are the young people that we are dealing with, the Corbett Cut COVID kids. These are the young people who 10 years ago were little babies when there was a divestment in education here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and decimated a number of our programs that provided wraparound services and academic enrichment. And this is the environment that these young people have grown up in. And in addition to that, you layer on 2 years of learning loss. You layer on 2 years of a pandemic unlike anything that we've all ever seen in a lifetime. And you have a conundrum of activity that you could never anticipate and or expect. And so while I recognize as a parent that parents, we have to do our part, and I'm asking all parents to do their part, we also, from a government and community perspective, must continue to utilize every tool in our toolbox to seek to help and support our young people. So while we are working on ensuring that we have a robust curfew in place, we are also working to expand the Community Evening Resource Center model across the city of Philadelphia so that we have an opportunity to provide young people with safe spaces across our city. And my goal is to have one in every police division so that we can have opportunity for every young person in every area. And one thing I wanted to say lastly, Mr. Chair, for the record, on this issue, because I know that suddenly there's been intense interest around the community evening resource centers, particularly from the media here in Philadelphia, and I want to address that head on at this time. And what I will say is that I'm not going to apologize for seeking to do all that I can to help our young people. And whether they go to the center voluntarily or involuntarily, the point is that we have serviced 500 young people in the community evening resource centers, the 2 that are open currently. And I know that we'll continue to service more. So whether they go voluntarily or involuntarily, they are now in a safe space and have access to resources while they are at that center. So I don't know if anyone is looking for an apology from me, but you won't find one, because I'm not going to apologize for seeking to expand the Community Evening Resource Center model and seek to provide safe spaces for them. So colleagues, today we have circulated the amendments in advance. I have called each of you, and I ask for your support of this legislation so that we can continue to do all that we can for our young people. And finally, my thoughts and prayers are with the families of the young people who were impacted by gun violence last night, particularly the family of the 13-year-old young person up in the northwest section of Philadelphia. That is nothing that any family should be going through in our city, and we will continue to do all that we can to help. So I thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank you, colleagues, for your support, and I'm looking forward to this hearing.
Member Richardson, I just want to thank you for your thoughtfulness and advocacy on behalf of our young people. It does not fall idle on me that we just toured the Juvenile Justice Center today. And what we are discovering, Member Gim and Member Goudier were in attendance of that tour, that they're getting younger. The youngest person in that center was 10 years old. And I say that with emphasis that they're getting in more serious trouble at a younger age. And whenever I look at the news, I always say, well, when did this shooting happen? And why were they out that late? And could we have done them a service by assuring that they should be in the house? So thank you and kudos for your work on this issue. Are there any other members of this committee who would like to make comment? Seeing none, Ms. Williams, can you read the title to bill number 220654?
Yes. Bill number 220654, an ordinance amending Chapter 10-300 entitled Minors to revise the evening curfew hours, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. Can you now read the first group of witnesses to testify?
Sure. Panel number 1 is Gary G. Williams, Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Human Services, and Joel Dales, Deputy Commissioner, Philadelphia Police Department, who is available for questions.
Thank you both. Please unmute your mics and begin your testimony.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, City Council members Gilmore, Richardson, Driscoll, Jones, Bass, Squilla, and members of the City Council Committee on Public Safety. Again, my name is Gary Williams, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner for Juvenile Justice Services here at DHS. Today, we've been asked to provide testimony in response to Bill number 220654, a bill introduced by Councilmember Gilmore Richardson that aims to amend Philadelphia's minor curfew law. As you know, during the past several years, the Philadelphia Department of Human Services has greatly increased and expanded our use of diversionary programs and services with the goal of preventing entry or further involvement with the child welfare and or delinquent systems. As part of this strategy, we are focused on providing safe places and activities for young people in our city. One example of this type of positive youth programming are the community evening resource centers. Currently, we have 2 community-based centers that are located in the south and southwest sections of Philadelphia. The centers are established in collaboration with City Council, specifically championed by Councilmember Gilmore Richardson. The staff at the centers provide safe environments and developmentally appropriate programming to youth ages 10 to 17. The goal is for the staff to connect with youth to promote positive development with emphasis on family engagement, conflict resolution, violence prevention, mentoring, coaching, and other service linkages. The centers are open from 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. To engage youth, the providers who operate the centers promote their programs and services to surrounding neighborhoods and invite youth to participate. The centers are also available to receive youth who have come to the attention of the Philadelphia Police Department after a curfew violation. Staff work with youth who violated curfew to safely bring them home and address their needs. Diversified Community Services operates the South Bay site at the Dixon House. The weekly schedule at Dixon House is full of activities such as homework support, yoga classes, sports, cooking instructions, and movie nights. They also have a gym on site for youth engaged in sports activities. This July, the Dixon House site organized the Community and Family Engagement Barbecue event. Community of Compassion operates the Southwest site. There you will find youth engaged in drone programming, financial literacy classes, peer mediation. Each Wednesday, youth participate in Cops, Kids, and Cameras, which is a program partnership with the Philadelphia Police to connect youth with photography skills. Youth can also become drone cadets when they participate in this unique drone education program, which is designed to produce safe and responsible drone pilots. This site also partnered with Children's Hospital of Philadelphia for some back-to-school events, including a major book bag giveaway. At DHS, we believe in a community-based approach to prevention. Our goal is to build trust with the youth and families of our community. The centers accomplish this by creating a safe place for youth and their families. Since January of 2022, the centers have served more than 568 youth. This number includes both youth who may have come to the center voluntarily or by way of the Philadelphia Police Department. DHS is delighted to announce that with the support of council, 2 new centers are projected to open by the end of October 2022. These centers will be in the central and northwest sections of the city. The Institute for the Development of African American Youth, Inc., will serve youth in the central section of Philadelphia, and the Juvenile Justice Center of Philadelphia will serve youth in the northwest section. Thank you for this opportunity to testify and for your support towards building and growing safe spaces and activities for the youth of our city. That concludes my testimony. I invite your questions if you have any. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Just briefly, I had the opportunity to go to Pittsburgh some years ago, and they have a rendition of these types of centers that they've evolved to involve transportation. They get kids from one at-risk neighborhood, transport them out of that neighborhood and back after the after-school activities safely. And they have attributed those operations of those centers to the reduction of crime within that youth demographic. I know it's early, but are you seeing any impact and results as it relates to this investment?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Jones. Our Performance Management and Technology Division at DHS has worked with the CERT leadership, JJS leadership here. They've created a very comprehensive evaluation tool. I will say that we don't have a report as of yet, but we are in position to actually provide that in the very near future. The evaluation is actually on 6 levels. It includes reviewing client file. It includes reviewing reporting requirements. The CERCs have a requirement to report certain information on a monthly basis. It's a administrative requirement review. It also includes agency level quality indicators, which basically assesses the quality of the assessments that are being done on each site, as well as the programming. And there's also a community and family level quality indicator section where we are assessing the level of engagement, not only with the families involved, but also the general community. And then most importantly, there's a youth voice element where young people are being interviewed. So we elevate their voices to get a sense of how they're experiencing the CERC centers and what, if anything that we need to do to adjust. We should have something in terms of some outcome data in the very, very near future.
Thank you so much. Member Richardson, do you want to get any questions on the record?
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I pressed enter. My apologies. I've got questions at the end of the panel. So after we hear from DC Dales, then I'll have a few questions. But I just wanted to thank Deputy Commissioner Williams and the team at DHS for all of the work you all have been able to do in getting the centers up and running and getting through the RFP process. I did want to have for the record the number of young people who have visited each of the centers.
Yes, I actually have a aggregate number, and that number is 568. It's over actually that number, but that is the number that I have in terms of the last information that came out of our PMT. Is well over that. Just don't have that information published at this point. I will say this, Council Member Gilmore. When you look at the summer, we just got out of the summer months, May, June, July, August. There's an array of programming that's happening in each center. So when you tally on a monthly basis, there's anywhere from 70 to 80 workshops that children are participating in. On average, we are seeing 250 participants a month that actually fill those seats within those workshops. And that's on average. That's combined just with only 2 search centers. And so, and as you all know, and we referenced this earlier with the tragic murder of a 13-year-old in Northwest. And that happened around the 7 o'clock hour. And again, my condolences to that family. The centers operate from 7 to 9 o'clock in terms of programming. They're there until 2 a.m. Upon actually participating in a workshop, those young people are safely driven home, or we make sure that children are actually getting home safely. And so we know that that period of time is very, very dangerous in our city. We're giving places of safety, security for young people to come to be exposed to programming. And I believe even some of our city council members raised the question months ago, what are we doing in the evening? And so this is a 7-day-a-week operation where we engage young people during that most critical time. And so more information in terms of numbers will be provided to council.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Richardson. Deputy Commissioner Dales?
Good afternoon, sir. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm good.
I'm available for Q&A. I don't have a testimony today. They mentioned I'll be here for Q&A only, but whatever you have to ask me, I'll be ready to answer.
Are there any questions from the committee?
Hi, Mr. Chair, I have questions.
Thank you. Please begin your questions.
I'm interested in knowing about the young people that we're picking up, particularly the young people who are not coming voluntarily, who are picking up and bringing to the community evening resource centers. One, what portion of the 560 or so youth do they total? And second, what do we know about those young people, about their family situation, about whether they're involved in the justice system already or have been, about whether they're, coming back through the system in other ways? What kind of information are we tracking about those young people in particular?
Commissioner Dales?
I believe that would be an answer. Deputy Commissioner Williams, you would know the status in reference to who's being dropped off at the centers.
Yeah, so I'll say that the majority of our young people who we're serving are coming by way of community outreach. And so there's a smaller number that are coming by way of curfew violation. I'll also say that the age group that we're seeing the most, we actually service 10 to 17. Age group that we're actually seeing the most, probably the top tier, is 12 to 14. And then a close second, 14 to 17. The young people represent those particular communities. And when we look at the race and ethnicity, we're looking at African American young people. I think we're off to a great start. This is the first year. We're seeing some tremendous progress with only 2, as the Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson indicated. With the 2 new circs coming in the end of October, we'll have 4 of the police regions covered. And so we're off to a great beginning. Again, I'll just remind folks, we're not in the enforcement business. So when they come to us, whether they're coming from curfew violation or voluntarily, we're providing a level of positive youth development. I'll also say out of the 568, 300 actually are young people who continue to come back. So it's one thing to engage them. It's another thing to keep their attention.
I'm not suggesting that we enact enforcement. I guess I'm more questioning if it behooves us to have information about the young people that we're picking up and kind of taking to the evening resource centers. What do we know about them that might maybe help them not to, stay on the wrong path, assuming they're on the wrong path? Do we track anything about those young people? Do we know if we picked up those young people more than one time, or if they've gotten into trouble down the line after we picked them up and took them to the evening resource center? I'm just wondering about the information that we're gathering, if any, about the young people we're taking to the center.
Yeah, so I will say that the young people who we are picking up, when they come voluntarily, they tend to come back. When they come involuntarily, they tend not to, which is a smaller percentage. The data, some of the data that we are collecting includes, and I'm looking at a report here, includes gender. So we're looking at more males than females. In terms of, to specifically answer your question, we're not assessing the fact, we're not determining, or we can't conclude that young people that we are actually serving are actively involved in DHS or the juvenile justice system. That is an area that we have to take a closer look at. We do track whether or not young people come back to the centers, and right now it is a pretty high percentage of young folks that are being re-engaged. By way of community outreach, more or less these young people predominantly are self-referrals or as a result of community outreach.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for this panel? Seeing none, Ms. Williams, who is the next group to testify?
Our next and final witness is Bilal Qayyum.
Mr. Qayyum?
Good
afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes. And before you start your testimony, I want to thank you for what you're doing down at that Juvenile Justice Center. It is appreciated by the staff there. It is appreciated by the juveniles there, and it's appreciated by us. So thank you.
Thank you. Council Chairman Jones, and Councilwoman Richardson, Gaudier, and I think James was still on, and Councilman Thomas. My testimony is going to be kind of short. One, I do support fully Bill number 220654. But I also want to make a comment that I want the council folks to seriously consider it will be a controversial subject that I'm getting ready to propose. Listening to the previous testimony from Deputy Commissioner Dales and Deputy Commissioner Williams, I'm a strong believer in responsibility. I think one of the things that is really hitting the city now, I say over and over again as people hear me talk about reducing violence, and I've said numerous times to even the news media, and to the Black community takes responsibility for the violence taking place in our city and taking ownership like we have done in the past. And when we have done ownership in the past, taken ownership in the past, we have had great results. An example, Councilman Jones, you know very well, when I was working at the House with Mosier, the reason why we reduced gang deaths to 0 in the late 70s is because we took responsibility. We went out in the streets, we organized, and we did everything we were supposed to do as a community. We didn't worry about the mayor, the police, or the DA. So I'm promoting that again about responsibility. And I really believe that the centers are working good from what all the statistics I heard during this hearing. But I really believe that when police officers pick up young males after the curfew hour, that their parents should be fined. There should be a fine put on the parent. If a child is picked up after the curfew hour by the police, and when I'm saying fine, do it. It's almost like Councilwoman Gotti say, do assessment. If that parent is irresponsible, then we got to hold that parent responsible. Now I know that some folks don't want to hear that, but and I heard all kinds of arguments about what a parent might be working 2 or 3 jobs and all that. Most of these young males that I interacted with, parents ain't working 2 or 3 jobs. They just are being irresponsible. I'll say it like I'm saying it. I talked to 3 of fathers before this hearing this morning who have all lost loved ones to violence. And all 3 of them have agreed with my comment I just made, that something has to be taken more than this picking up a child, taking them to a curfew center, and then you're taking that child home, which I wasn't aware of. I mean, which is a good thing, but I'm just saying, and that parent's not coming to pick up that child, I think that parent needs to be financially held responsible. And I'm not suggesting what a fee should be, but I think it should be a fee that is opposed as part of this whole curfew effort to try to get kids off the streets. So I'm recommending that you consider that as part of this bill, amend it, whatever you have to do. But you do assessment of that parent. So I'm not saying blanket give a fine to all the parents. I'm saying that if a parent is found out that that child's in the street, that parent is not watching that child, making sure that child is in the streets, that something happens. And I will use an example. Father's Day Rally Committee's office is in the Martin Luther King Center, 22nd Cecil B. Moore. Every day when I go in my office, I look out my window. And in that look out my window, there's a bench. And that bench is the bench that gentleman was sitting at 2 o'clock in the morning. And everybody knows the case where the kids had a confrontation with that gentleman. And that gentleman, because of that confrontation, was killed. And when I followed the news on that, and I know they got two arrests. One of the young man who was arrested is still at JJSC, and the young ladies at JJSC. Those kids were out at a time where the mother admitted at first she wasn't sure they were supposed to be over a friend's house or a relative's house. She wasn't sure what happened. And when they talked about the relatives and stuff, they didn't know that they went out. To me, that man could have been saved if those kids were picked up at 2 o'clock in the morning, taken to a curfew center or wherever it was. That man might be still alive today. But also I believe that those parents, if the kids live with the mother, she should be held responsible for the act that happened of the death of the man. We have to look at doing stuff different today. Yes, I'm an elder. I finally, Councilman Jones, accept that. And all the other council folks that know me, I'm an elder. I kind of think different. As young folks tell me when I go into the juvenile justice center every week, but I'm having that kind of dialogue with them. I just think that we have to, so all the old stuff that worked can work today, I really believe. You know, everybody wants to be loved, first of all. Everybody. That's not something that's old. I mean, it is since the beginning of the time, but everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to feel that someone cares about them. That is what is a major thing that's missing right now with a lot of our children. I see that every week. So I'm just saying that, but at the same time, we have to take, as adults, we have to take responsibility for our action. So if our kids are out in the streets, and they shouldn't be out in the streets, and adults not taking his responsibility for the action, I think that, once again, there should be a consideration by this committee to find that adult. That's my testimony.
Thank you. On 54th Street, and Member Gilmore Richardson knows there's a Chinese restaurant on 54th Street. One of my staffers lives in the complex down the street. He came out for whatever he was going to the store, and on his way to that store, a young person or in the age range of 7 or 8 is running around out in that street. He was concerned. He stopped the kid. Are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. Where's your parents? He seemed a bit turned around. About 10 minutes later, the parent, one of them, and a escort, that's the way I'll put it, came down the street and said, you know, hey, that's my baby. I got him. Da, 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 da. But how do you get out? Who's supposed to be watching them? And so when you say about taking that data, Member Gutierrez, and taking a deeper dive on it, I agree with that. That we should try to find out why are you out here, and what can we do to prevent you from having further complications. And I say that based on the 100 shooter review, where a number of these young people had touches with the system early on before they ever became a shooter. And if we can intervene earlier and kind of find out the causes, I think society, those kids, the community will be better off. And so thank you for what you do, Bilal. Does any member have any further questions from Mr. Qayyum?
I mean, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to clarify. I wasn't necessarily asking for the data because I think we should find people. I don't know that I'm there, but I do think picking up young people, you know, after curfew is probably an opportunity to provide a different level of intervention that could save their lives and save other people's lives. And so I appreciate the existence of the centers and look forward to working to see how we can really change the path for some of these youth.
So I understood what you said, but I was real clear about how you meant it. All right. Are there any other questions for Mr. Qayyum? Seeing none. Ms. Williams, are there?
Mr. Chair, just
Yes.
really quickly, I just wanted to thank Bilal Qayyum for all of his work and for coming onto this hearing. We talk very frequently about these issues. And, you know, you said you were all here, Bilal, but I'm just a happy belated birthday. Okay, you're just seasoning the game, okay? And we appreciate all of your work. And I do accept the feedback that you have provided. I do think it's important. We did remove, and for the record, for clarity, we did remove the fine structure. And that was at the policy recommendation of the Defenders Association relative to the whole theory around criminalizing poverty. But as a parent, I will say that as a parent, I'm responsible for my little people, all 3 of them. And I take that responsibility very seriously. And I know due to a number of circumstances that not everybody can do that, right? But we have to be responsible for our young people. We have to, from a government perspective, from a community perspective, and from a parent perspective. And I'm not going to apologize about parents needing to be responsible for their young people. Because every time we do something from a government perspective, people say, well, why are they doing that, right? But we have to step in because there's so much need all across the city, and we can't abdicate our duty simply because folks don't want to be responsible for their young people. So I just, want Bilal to know that I received the feedback. It is something that we are going to look into. There is still opportunity to further amend this bill, and working with the members of this committee and this body. And we will continue to look at that. It's something that we would need to research based on what the current structures are, and I will certainly get back to you with that information.
Councilman Jones, can I make one quick comment?
Certainly.
And this is reference to my good friend, Councilwoman Gaudier. Listening to you and I know what the feedback is from other folks in council, all right? One of the things maybe we consider is that if there is a young man or a young woman who is out past curfew, is picked up by the police, and there's assessment done. I agree with what you said about this, who is, why, and all that kind of. If it's an assessment done and it determines that that person, that parent, was not being responsible, maybe it's at a monetary issue. Maybe we should require that parent to be in classes, parenting classes. To, you know, in other words, I'm saying we've got to hold that parent responsible. So it's not a monetary issue, which I know some folks, and I know the argument about justice and social and all that kind of stuff. All right. But we should hold them still responsible. So maybe I'm recommending that we can consider part of this bill or part of the policy of how the centers are run, that if it is a parent that has been found that they have been irresponsible in their children, we don't want them to go more parents in the DHS system. I'm not proposing that, but that parent should have maybe classes on parenting. I think that's something that you consider.
I would be down for that. And I also would hope that if we look at the family's needs and we see that there are needs for housing, or there are workforce needs, or, you know, mental health needs, that those are things that we would be willing to intervene and provide as well. We tend to jump towards penalties and you know, penalizing people when it would probably cost us less to support people in the way they need to be supported than to deal with the cost of a homicide that comes from people, largely from people not having what they need. So this is a conversation that we can keep going. And I disagreed with you on that specific point, but the disagreement is much less than the huge amount of respect that I have for you, Bilal.
Well said. Well said. If that concludes the testimony of these witnesses, are there any others here who wish to testify on this bill? Seeing none, would any of the members of the committee like to have a closing comment? Member Richardson?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you again, colleagues, and thank you to all of the witnesses that provided testimony for today's hearing. And I'm just asking, humbly asking for your support for this bill. Thank you very, very much.
I want to thank all those who testified. And this concludes our public hearing, and would you disconnect from this hearing so that we can begin our public meeting? Give folk a minute or two to disconnect. So now we will begin our public meeting of the Committee on Public Safety for City Council to review Bill number 220654. Ms. Williams, will you take the roll to establish a quorum?
Councilmember Gautier,
Present.
Councilmember Gim,
I am present.
Councilmember Thomas,
Present.
and Chairman Jones.
Present. A quorum has been established, and I will recognize Member Goodyear for an amendment to Bill number 220654.
You're on mute, Councilmember Gautier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer an amendment to Bill number 220654. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to Bill number 220654 be approved.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
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 All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All
Aye.
those opposed? The ayes have it. And bill number 220-654 as amended has been approved. Chair again recognizes Member Goodyear.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 220-654 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Is there
Second.
a second? Is there a second? Okay. It has been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? The ayes have it. And bill number 220-654 as amended has been approved, and the rules of council have been suspended in order to allow reading of this bill at our next session of council. This concludes the business of the Public Safety Committee. I want to thank everybody for their prompt attendance, and thank you for bearing with me for having technical difficulties and being a little bit late. So thank you all.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Congrats, Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for your availability. I truly appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness in the questions that you raised, Councilmember Gaudier. So thank you very, very much.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Have a good day.
Thank you.